was nothing. Woo! This is the Ryvid Outset, and I'm going to share with you all of the performance numbers. Let's start out with a 0 to 60 run and see what it can do. Go. Congratulations, you completed acceleration in 32 seconds. Yeah, the app, this isn't gonna work. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna mount the camera facing the screen so you can see when I'm at 0 and when I'm at 60. I'll go frame by frame if I have to. Battery's still at 97%. Should be good. I feel pretty confident saying about 5.7 seconds, at least with me on the bike. I bet a better rider could probably get that down into the low 5s. The initial launch is a little scary and a little hard to control without either spinning the rear tire or picking the front wheel up off the ground, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But that's definitely a spot where someone could make up a little bit of time. Now that I've got the camera focused right on the display, let's go ahead and confirm what the top speed is as well. Now I did notice a little discrepancy between the actual speed and what it is reading on the display. An interesting point I didn't know about is that manufacturers of cars and motorcycles can actually be a little bit high on this speedometer, up to 10%, but they cannot be under. So they always err on the side of the speed reading a little bit higher than what might be realistic. And it looks like that is the case with this as well. I did get brief moments of 88 miles an hour on the screen, but with it being close to 10% too fast, about 80 miles an hour was the maximum speed I was able to get it up to. But what are the real numbers, the actual horsepower and the actual torque? I do have a motorcycle dyno in my garage for testing things just like this. Now, I don't have a lot of electric motorcycles on my dyno board. There aren't really a lot of electric motorcycles to test in my defense. Chopper, as I call it, which did just over 5,000 watts. And I have done both variations of the Land Moto District. These tests always make me a little bit nervous because there's so much power going through here, but I know the dyno can handle it. I'm expecting good things with the updated ASI controller that's installed on this. So here's the big number, power in kilowatts, that's our horsepower. Here's the torque. Here's the speed in miles per hour. All right, battery is sitting at 85.8 volts, 99%. The only thing I've done is pull it off the charger and move it up onto the dyno. For the best possible results, I am going to run the sport test first. It was nothing. Woo! Holy cow! Smoked the tire. Okay, I think what I'm gonna have to do is roll the throttle on slowly until I got enough traction to actually gun it, because that had no chance of hanging on. Let's get it rolling a little bit. You know, when you're on the road and you got wind noise, it doesn't seem like this thing screams. It seems kind of quiet, but on the dyno, 19,000 watts, 220 pound-feet of torque, but I think I can give it a little bit more juice. It's just a matter of balancing power and traction. $19,680 watts, 290 pound-feet of torque that time. Because there's some variance in putting the power on, I want to do another one just to verify, because that was so much better than my first run. Okay, I got an even better number that time, 334, and the chart is looking really clean and accurate. Even though I've used a little bit of battery power, I gotta keep doing this till I get a consistent number. 95% power, but not having peak battery actually may be helping, because I'm able to actually manage the traction a little bit better. Okay, I think that's within like 1 pound-feet. So here's all of the runs. This is the first one where I was kind of trying to figure out how to roll the throttle on without the tires slipping. Over 19,000 watts, 220 pound-feet of torque, which I thought was pretty good. The next run, I got 290 and a little bit more peak power. The next run, I got a little less peak power, which makes sense because we're starting to drain the battery down a little, so I'm not going to get that every single time. But then I bumped up to 334.3 at 301 RPM. The following run, we were within a few hundred watts of peak power, but I got 334.2 pound-feet. That is pretty accurate, and within 4 RPM, so it's happening right at the same spot. So I think these last 2 runs are the winners. Now my gut feeling was that this was going to beat the Land District bikes on horsepower, but I was not expecting it to have that much more torque. That's gonna put the Ryvid to the #1 spot on the dyno board. I'd say out of motorcycles, which is true, but really out of everything. I got so excited about those numbers, I forgot to do the eco mode. And this is strictly just so you know how tame it is from one mode to the other. I'm gonna try going full throttle. I don't know if it's gonna slip or not. Let's see what happens. 3, 2, 1. Oh, yeah, I can't handle that. All right, we gotta roll it a little bit still, even in eco. There we go. So eco mode gives us over 6,000 watts, big step down, like 1/3 of the power, but we still get 164 pound-feet. So figure 1/3 the horsepower, half or so of the torque. Now I have a scooter I want to test that could come in close to these eco mode results. I'm not sure, but from those specs, that puts eco mode on this as more powerful than just full out max throttle on the Iahora M1 PS, which honestly I'm not too surprised about. Now there's one more surprise thing I want to test. I mean, it's got reverse. You don't have to worry about reverse taking off on you. It's only about 300 watts. That's really not bad at all. About 19,500 watts or 19.5 kilowatts of power. If you want that in horsepower, I'll put that on screen here. Now that doesn't seem like a lot of horsepower for a motorcycle, but it's the torque to the rear wheel that really gives us that instant acceleration throughout the entire speed range. 334 pound-feet of torque is just a lot. But that means this thing did take the #1 spot for the time being. It has more peak horsepower than the Land Moto bikes, and those 2 bikes that I tested had different gearing. One of them was geared lower, had an insane 295 pound-feet of torque, but it could only top out at about 55 miles an hour. This bike tops out at 80 miles an hour and still had more torque at 334 pound-feet. That is very impressive. The first time I rode a Ryvid, it was the Anthem. Now, it's worth talking about the Anthem motorcycle as well in this video because the drivetrain is identical between these 2 bikes. It's actually the same frame, same battery, same belt drive system, the same gearing, same everything. You're just getting slightly different tires, bodywork, suspension, and all of the parts are interchangeable. Now, the Anthem, when I first rode it, the one thing I wished it had was a little bit more low-end grunt.
So what we say is that 0 to 40 is great.
And the way they've described it to me is that the Eco mode with this updated ASI controller is kind of like the original Anthem. I don't know if that's totally true. Eco mode feels pretty tame on this, but the power difference in sport mode is extremely noticeable. This bike is a lot of fun. Typically I stick it into sport mode and I don't even think about changing it back to Eco. I really would never ride it that way unless I really need to conserve range. So we've got the power, we've got the torque, we've got the top speed, but realistically, this thing isn't made for straight, flat stretches of road, at least not in my opinion. I think it's designed for twisty, tight, fun roads. So let's go see how it handles. Oh man, you killed my life. I think the handling is great. I think it's capable of more than I can do. It's never felt unstable. It's always felt like a good balance between maneuverability and just high speed stability. Like at those high, 75, 80 mile an hour speeds, it feels rock solid. But then I also feel like you can whip it through the turns at 25, 30 miles an hour. 15 miles an hour. Suggested, right? This is a good road. Doesn't get much better than this. Oh, that turn is awesome. Now I'm gonna have this thing for the next week or so. I don't know how much longer, but if you want to ride this, you can even come ride on this road. Give us a call, come by the shop. I'll make sure it's fully charged for you, and you can do this.
my battery's starting to get low. I'm at 23%. One thing I gotta point out is that the performance is not the same throughout the entire range of the battery. So the controller limits the maximum current as the battery gets low to ensure that none of the cells are discharged too far or too low. So at 23%, here's what sport mode looks like. Kind of feels like eco mode. So that's just something to be aware of, that, you know, if you're expecting to get on the highway with this thing and go 65, you can, but not in the bottom third of the battery pack.
I have now ridden this bike well over 200 miles. I have ridden it almost every day for a solid week straight. It's been a ton of fun every single day, and the bike just feels solid. It feels planted, it feels maneuverable. I'm getting more and more confident with it every day that I ride, but I have never felt timid or scared to just really lean into the turns. I understand the Anthem has slightly stickier tires, but these Dunlop Mutant tires have been working really well on the road. I've done a little bit of gravel as well. I feel like they're a perfect setup for the bike. Only at the initial outburst of throttle do I feel like there's a risk of breaking the tire loose. My riding skills have to be leveled up a little bit to really push this thing to the absolute limits in the turns. Now, I've reviewed a lot of very fast electric bikes, like the Lyric, the Goat Power bikes, and I just have to make it clear for those watching, if that's kind of the direction you're looking at, is some sort of really fast e-bike with pedals versus maybe an all-out electric motorcycle, the handling of this is on an entirely another level. The power of this, an entirely different level. You really can't compare those two. They're not the same thing at all. This is 100% motorcycle. And one of the things I was told, which I found quite interesting, is that the way this rear suspension is designed, that the bike does not squat under acceleration. The rear of the bike actually lifts as this thing accelerates. They've done that intentionally to improve the handling. And if you didn't catch it, I'll show this little clip from the end of the dyno run. You'll see when I get on the throttle, which way does the saddle move? And then when I let off the throttle, what happens? It's very clear that the suspension is working as they intended. I know they're working on other suspension options. This one does have some adjustment here. I haven't messed with any of that. I'm kind of just leaving the bike as it was delivered to me. Now, because I've been riding this for a week straight, and I've been doing everything from highway riding at 60, 65 miles an hour to a lot of backcountry twisty roads, which is by far the most fun with this bike, but I've been getting a really good feel for the range, but I want to do some more specific tests on that. So I'm working on a whole separate video where I do a bunch of various range tests, like how fast can I kill the battery if I power this thing to the absolute max and push it as hard as I can? How far could I actually stretch this battery? It's rated at 4.3 kilowatt hours. The charger is built into the battery. The whole battery is removable. It's on wheels. There's a lot of really awesome stuff that I haven't even gotten into yet. You could charge from a 110 outlet. You can charge from a level 2 charging station, but I want to give you some real hard data on how far this thing can actually go under different conditions. If you have any other questions about this bike, please leave them in the comments. I want to make sure to answer everything I possibly can. I've got it in my hands for about another week. I'm in Grass Valley, California, and if you are interested in an electric motorcycle, I highly recommend you reach out to our shop and come take this thing for a spin. It's here for 2 reasons. 1, so I can make some videos about it, and 2, so people like you can come swing by our shop and test ride it. So bring your motorcycle helmet, your motorcycle license. I can point you to some nearby roads that are nice and twisty and a lot of fun. If you want to see that follow-up video, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss it, and I will post it right here. And of course, there is going to be a link in the description of this video. Check that so you can look at the Ryvid Anthem and the Ryvid Outset. This one is not out to customers yet. It's coming out this summer. You can pre-order it right now. They are throwing in this more powerful ASI controller for free if you pre-order the bike. Highly recommend it.
Completely different route than I initially anticipated.